Michael Jordan and NASCAR are heading to court in December, and now NASCAR just dropped a huge pile of paperwork that could change everything. Late Friday night, NASCAR asked a judge to end this whole lawsuit before it even gets to a trial, and they brought some big names with them to help make their point. So here's what's happening. Michael Jordan's race team, 2311 Racing, and another team called Front Row Motorsports are suing NASCAR. They say NASCAR is running things like a monopoly, which means NASCAR has too much control and power over stock car racing. The two teams didn't like the deal NASCAR offered them, so they refused to sign it. But here's the thing. Every other team except these two signed the deal. That's 13 teams who said yes, and only 2 teams who said no. NASCAR filed what's called a summary judgment motion. That basically means they're asking the judge to look at all the facts and end the case right now, without going to trial. The trial is supposed to start on December 1st, but NASCAR wants it stopped before then. They say the focus should go back to racing instead of courtroom battles. In NASCAR's filing, they said something pretty direct. They wrote that this lawsuit should come to an end because that's what the garage wants. They said everyone should be focused on exciting racing for the rest of 2025 and planning for 2026, not sitting in a courtroom. NASCAR also said something important about what this lawsuit is really about. They stated that this lawsuit is not about antitrust laws. Instead, they say it's just an attempt to renegotiate an agreement that was already signed and is being followed by all the other race teams. But NASCAR didn't just file paperwork. They brought backup, big backup. They got declarations from some of the most powerful team owners in NASCAR. We're talking about Rick Hendrick, Roger Penske, Joe Gibbs, and Richard Childress. These are legends in NASCAR. These owners run the biggest and most successful teams in the sport. Let's start with Rick Hendrick. His team, Hendrick Motorsports, is the winningest team in NASCAR history. In his declaration, Hendrick said, "The charter agreement is critical to the stability of NASCAR." He said without this framework in place, he questions whether teams like his could even survive long-term. Hendrick wrote that undoing what everyone negotiated together will result in huge damage to the sport and to their businesses. But most importantly, he said, it will hurt the people and families who depend on them for their jobs. Hendrick also made it clear he's doing this voluntarily. He said, NASCAR asked him to provide this declaration, but he's doing it of his own free will without bias toward either side. He hopes the matter gets resolved in a way that doesn't put the sport at risk. Then there's Joe Gibbs. He's not just a NASCAR owner, pan-stifferate. He used to be the head coach of the Washington football team in the NFL. Gibbs said the most important thing to him is that this lawsuit gets resolved quickly and in a way that preserves the charter system and keeps NASCAR viable for the long term. He said this must happen to ensure the health, happiness, and prosperity of the hundreds of employees and their families who work for him. Gibbs wrote that nothing matters more to him than that. Gibbs also talked about the charter system creating equity value, which is basically the worth of owning a team. He said it's really important that this equity value becomes permanent. He's been saying for a long time that he wants the charter system to be permanent because he thinks it would make the teams and the whole sport financially healthier. There's an interesting side note about Gibbs too. He made it clear to both sides that he doesn't want to be a witness in this case. He thinks it's important for everything to be resolved before real damage happens to the sport. That makes sense because Gibbs has a good relationship with both sides. He knows Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin from 2311 Racing, and of course he works with NASCAR. Roger Penske had some really interesting things to say. Penske is a huge name in racing. He owns Team Penske in NASCAR, but he also owns the entire IndyCar series. In his declaration, Penske said, he signed the 2025 charter agreement because he felt NASCAR wasn't going to change their offer anymore and it was time for his team to move forward. Here's the cool part. Penske said he liked NASCAR's charter system so much that he created a similar system for IndyCar. In 2024, IndyCar and all the full-time teams signed a charter-type agreement that started in 2025. Penske said, the IndyCar charter has some similarities to NASCAR's charter and he believes it has brought value to his series. Penske also talked about the next-gen car, which is the current race car NASCAR uses. He said since the next-gen car started racing in 2022, his team's costs have gone down. They need fewer race cars and fewer replacement parts. Plus, he said the next-gen car has made the racing better on the track. Penske ended by saying he hopes the parties can settle this lawsuit as soon as possible. Gordon Smith, who owns HYAK Motorsports, said, he has big concerns about this lawsuit because of all the uncertainty it brings. He said it could have a bad effect on the future of the sport. Smith hopes everything gets resolved in a way that protects NASCAR's future and creates more stability for everyone involved. Cal Wells, who runs Legacy Motor Club, said something that might surprise people. He said the cost to compete in the Cup Series has been reduced by about 40% thanks to the next-gen car. That's a huge cost savings. Other owners who submitted declarations included Richard Childress, Brad Keselowski, Carl Long, B.J. McLeod, Rick Ware, and John Wood. That's a lot of owners all saying similar things. They want the charter system to stay, and they want this lawsuit to go away. But not every team submitted a declaration. 4 charter-holding teams didn't join in. Those teams are Trackhouse Racing, Spire Motorsports, Cowlick Racing, and Haas Factory Team. Now, let's talk about what NASCAR is actually arguing in their legal filing. They have several main points. First, they say a lot of what 2, 3, 1, 1, and Front Row are complaining about happened too long ago. There's something called a statute of limitations, which means you only have a certain amount of time to file a lawsuit. For antitrust cases, that's 4 years. NASCAR says the bulk of the conduct the teams are upset about happened between 2016 and 2019. That's when NASCAR bought the ARCA Racing Series and merged with International Speedway Corporation. Since parts of the case rely on things that happened before October 2020, NASCAR says those claims are too old. Second, NASCAR points out that 2, 3, 1, 1, and Front Row already raced under something called a release clause. This clause basically says teams can't sue NASCAR. Both teams raced under the previous charter agreement from 2016 to 2024, which had this release clause. So NASCAR is saying they already agreed not to sue. Third, NASCAR says the teams haven't shown what damages they've suffered. The teams are trying to claim they've been harmed, but NASCAR says they haven't proven it with numbers. NASCAR also says the teams can't show damages because they're not trying to start their own competing racing series. Fourth, NASCAR makes an interesting argument about 2311 specifically. They say 2311 entered NASCAR with their eyes wide open. They knew what the charter system was all about when they started their team. So NASCAR is saying 2311 can't claim to be surprised or blindsided by how the charter system works now. Fifth, NASCAR says the teams just haven't provided any real evidence of anti-competitive behavior. They say the teams fail to provide evidence on essential elements under something called the rule of reason, which is a legal standard.